What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, we're back at the farm and we're planting out a blueberry patch, something I've always wanted to do. I'm gonna show you everything that we're doing from start to finish. So with that, let's get going. Got our blueberries, box 1 of 2. We're gonna plant 30 plants today. And I've got my fertilizer and I've got my secret soil additive. We'll talk more about the secret soil additive in a second. These plants were just leftovers from berry season. And since we didn't want them to go to waste, they were coming out of dormancy, we couldn't ship them. We said, well, why not have a berry patch? So let's go take it where we're gonna put them. Let's get going. All right. So here's where we're gonna plant our blueberries. So we've got 30 plants. We're gonna space them about 6 feet apart or so. And so I need roughly about 180 linear feet of bed space. I think this spot's gonna be a really good area. I won't have enough, I'll have enough fertilizer, but I won't have enough of my secret soil additive. And that's okay, because I can come back and add it later. But the first thing I need to do is I need to till up the area. So behind me here, I've got where I'm gonna plant my blueberries. Now, I had to be kind of careful not to go too close to the apples and stuff. I wanted a good spacing around there as stuff grows. I don't want stuff too crowded. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do singular rows. Now, as I said, I've got 30 plants. So what I'd like to do is get 3 rows of blueberries. So about 10 per row. So I'm basically gonna aim for about 60-foot rows. That's kind of the idea. I'll then have 3 rows of blueberries. And then in between each row, I'm gonna go about 11 to 12 foot spacing, because that way as the blueberries get larger and they bush out, I'll have plenty of room to walk, to prune, to maintain. If I have to spray, I could spray, things like that. And so I'm gonna do, like I said, 3 roughly 60-foot rows, and that should give me enough room to plant all 30 of my plants. So I guess there's no better time to start than now. Let's go. This is giving me enough room to mow in between, because if I don't have enough room to mow, it'll be totally pointless. And our soil looks so good. It's about there. So now it's time to get planting. These beds look incredible. I didn't quite measure them out. I mean, I assume they're about 50 to 60 feet-ish, give or take. They're good enough for me. Like I said, I needed enough space in between my apple rows. I couldn't be too cramped up in there. I kind of went off the spacing we have on our apples. So our spacing on our apples are 15 feet apart. I went a little bit on both sides, so 15 times 4, roughly 70-ish. So I went a little bit in on both sides there, hoping to be kind of right around that 60-foot mark. So I think we should be just about perfect if I used those as a guide, and my math is correct, which it is. So we're right around that 60-foot mark, which is awesome. Soil looks great. Now the next thing, and again, I want to always reiterate, what we do, you can either carbon copy if you've got the space, or you can scale down. Everything we're doing, you can do in a container. Everything. Just because I'm planting 30 plants doesn't mean you have to plant 30 plants. Just because I have 40 acres doesn't mean you need 40 acres. You could do all of this at your home. You could do all this on an apartment. In an apartment, on a patio, on a balcony. You can absolutely do this. So what we got here is we have our regular soil. If you've got soil at your house in ground, or if you've bought bagged soil, you've got soil. The next thing you need to do is you need to amend it. It is so important that you amend your soil, because if you don't amend it, your blueberries are going to suffer. If you've ever tried growing blueberries before and they've gotten kind of red or purple, or the growth has been stunted, spindly on top, low fruit production or no fruit production, generally that's associated with a lack of pH, or a lack of acidity, I should say. The pH is not low enough. So that brings in my secret bagged soil. And what is that? It's sphagnum moss. This sphagnum moss here is going to give us a pH of right around 4.5, which is great for growing blueberries, but it's also going to give us a more permanent, kind of a permanent growing medium. Over the years, as we begin to add more of this throughout the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to build up in the soil. It's going to really kind of create that environment that blueberries like, which is a very acidic environment. If you throw them into a pH of 6 or 7, they're going to be okay, but they're never going to do well, and they're always going to be slightly stunted until eventually they just die. So what we need to do is we need to slowly amend this soil. Now, we're going to be adding a lot more of this. As I said, we're going to be adding a ton more of this once we get some more. This was just what we had laying around. So I'm going to be applying this sphagnum moss here to this 60-foot row. I probably won't even get all 60 feet with this one bale. Luckily, it's really inexpensive. I'll pick up a bunch more. The next thing you can do, I understand that peat moss is a contentious issue. This is sustainably sourced peat moss. It's sourced by the company Sunshine. So Sunshine has a very good reputation of harvesting sustainably. They do not over harvest. They harvest from bogs that are regenerative. So, you know, it can be a contentious issue, but if you have the right brands that are doing the right thing, you can at least have some peace of mind. If you are absolutely no, I'm never going to touch it, I don't ever want to touch it, there is option B, but it's a little bit more hands-on, and that's using powdered sulfur. If you didn't want to use peat moss, you could come in here and throw in some powdered sulfur or pelletized sulfur about once a year to get that pH down, increase the acidity, and it would do the same thing. So I just choose to have it be a little bit more hands-off. That's why I'm going the route of sphagnum peat moss. But I'm also not ruling out that we may have to eventually also use, in combination with the sphagnum peat moss, some powdered sulfur as well. This is just also nice because this also amends the soil. This also adds organic material, and it kind of fluffs the soil, prevents it from compacting and keeps it nice and loose, which blueberries absolutely love that as well. Blueberries like soil that is not only acidic, but holds on to water fairly well. And this organic material really holds on to water quite well. Blueberries do not like arid, dry soil. They prefer kind of a little more, I wouldn't say boggy, but definitely on the damper side for sure. So this peat moss is going to provide that. And we're just going to walk down the row, throw this peat moss in. And as I said, when we get more, we're going to amend the rest of these rows the same way. That just about does it. There we go. So one of these 2.2 cubic foot bales of sphagnum moss, compressed sphagnum moss, did a 60-foot row. So that is awesome, good news. I'll grab 2 more bales for these 2 rows here. And we won't have time today to plant those out anyways. We're losing sunlight and we got stuff we got to finish up. So next in line is we're going to set our plants out and we're going to throw down our fertilizer. You have to remember, blueberries are very heavy feeders. Blueberries, you have to treat kind of similarly to like a tomato or a pumpkin. If you've ever grown those, they definitely need more nutrients than one would think. So we're going to be using Trifecta Plus. We're going to be using a 1/4 cup per plant in each planting hole. And because they're a perennial, we're going to apply some now and then some in the fall just before they start to change color. As soon as the nights start to dip down into the low 60s, you know, mid to high 50s, we want to throw that second fertilizing on so that we can get them ready to go into dormancy strong. So with that, I'm going to throw down some fertilizer. We can get planting. I'll tell you what, you guys, I don't always have the most accurate paces, but this time it worked out just perfect. I've got exactly about 2 to 2.5 paces between each fertilizing spot, and I think we did just about perfect. So there we go. Now that we got fertilizer down, we're just going to work that into the soil and plant our plants. The reason why I'm going with Trifecta is because Trifecta is balanced for all different types of soil. I prefer Trifecta over most fertilizers. I've been using it probably the longest of any fertilizer, not only because we make it, I make it because I couldn't really find something that met my needs, but the reason why I went with Trifecta is because it's balanced. It's going to provide slow release and fast acting over 70 different trace minerals, beneficial bacteria and fungi. It's going to have, it's going to have all the things that the blueberries will need to grow and thrive. It's not going to mess up soil pH. There's a lot of different fertilizers you have to be really careful of. Some fertilizers, if they advertise for like acid loving, if you already have acidic soil and then you use a fertilizer that is for acid loving, sometimes there's already some powdered sulfur or pelletized sulfur added to those, or it might be like potassium sulfate or something like that, where you're getting potassium or nitrogen sulfate or whatever, right? You're getting nitrogen, but then attached to that is a synthetic fertilizer that has nitrogen and sulfur. Prime example, magnesium sulfate, right? Magnesium sulfate is magnesium and sulfur. So you want to be really careful when you're adding certain fertilizers that it doesn't mess up the pH. What I'm really happy with is that trifecta is kind of like a chameleon. I've always called it that because you could throw it in acidic soil or alkaline soil and it kind of just, it's very neutral. So it just becomes whatever the pH of the soil is. It doesn't mess it up. So you gotta be really careful with that. But other than that, I mean, we got our 1/4 cup of fertilizer down. We have our sphagnum moss down. We've got our soil tilled up to about 6 inches deep or so. And we're ready to plant. The 3 varieties we've got here, we have Blue Crop, Duke, and Jersey. These are the 3 varieties that work best in our climate. I really love Darrow. I really love Top Hat. Those are other great varieties as well, but they're not suited for what we're doing right here. Blue Crop, or I should say Top Hat. Top Hat is a more container-friendly variety. If you've never tried Top Hat, you gotta give it a shot. It's the coolest plant ever. It's awesome for small spaces, especially if you're living in an apartment or have just a small backyard garden. It's great. And then also Darrow. Darrow has a tendency in our area, it's a great blueberry. It just has a tendency not to do all that well in ground. I find for whatever reason, it's a little more sensitive to watering conditions. And in ground here, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. There's times where we can get a monsoon, flood it out. I don't want to risk them dying. So because they're a little more finicky, they do better, I find, in large containers, 15, 20 gallon fabric pots. They do great in, or if you put them in a raised bed. If we were to have this raised up where the soil would drain very freely, Darrow would be here. But because these are in ground, I had to pick a little less, I should say, finicky varieties. So that leads me to these 3 here. I love them. I've grown them before. I've tried them. They're still great. I don't have a favorite blueberry. Let's put it that way. They're all awesome. So with that, I'm gonna throw some in the ground here. And what's awesome is unbeknownst to me, I grabbed 10 of each variety. So that kind of worked out well. I didn't expect that to be the case, but I just grabbed plants and I turned out to have grabbed 10 of each, which is just perfect. And last but not least, we are going to mulch. These are going to get mulched. They're going to get mulched about 3 to 4 inches deep with wood chip mulch to really hold that moisture in, suppress weeds, keep the plants looking nice, and give them a good start. The final thing you're probably wondering is pests. How are you going to keep pests down? Well, I'm going to keep pests down a couple different ways. One, we have our 8.5 foot tall deer fence with a 4 foot outer electrical fence to keep deer out. Deer would be a big concern for these in our area. Because we're in an open field, believe it or not, I actually don't see too many rabbits. We got lettuce and kale and broccoli and cabbage and beans planted in our raised bed over there. I haven't seen a single rabbit because there's so many hawks in the air, so many natural predators. I don't know I imagine there probably are some bunnies around, but if there are, they're real good hiders. I have not seen them. So I'm not too worried about bunnies. If they become a problem, they start nibbling off some of the tops, I will be able to put these beds are long enough, or I should say small enough, that I could put chicken wire around the edges to keep the bunnies out. But that's only if they become a problem. The only other pest that really will become a problem will be birds. And I've got a solution for that. You just gotta wait for future videos. But my plan is to construct essentially I'm gonna put posts in on either end. I'm gonna posts in the middle. So I'll have 3 posts. And then that's going to give me the ability to essentially drape, because they're gonna be 9 foot tall posts. I'm gonna bury them in the ground and I'm gonna drape my tool or my bird netting, not really bird netting, because I don't believe in using actual bird netting, but just like a fine mesh cloth over top of those posts, giving me the ability to essentially just kind of keep my plants free from birds, because you can get really large, essentially really large nets that'll touch the ground essentially. And at the top of those posts, I'm going to put a curved piece of PVC so that it'll be essentially like a giant, almost like a giant hoop house, if you will, that'll go over top of each bed. And then I can essentially just walk in here to harvest. When the plants aren't fruiting, I'll just take it off, no problem at all. So that's kind of my goal. I don't know if that's actually gonna be the case or not, we'll see, but it sounded good in my head. Let me know in the comments box below what you think. Alrighty, so there we go. I'm just gonna kind of straddle this bed. I don't want to compact the soil at all. I want to keep it nice and loose and fluffy and beautiful for these plants. But if you guys have any other questions and you're wondering about specifics on how to grow blueberries, or if there's any questions that were not covered in this video, I'd highly recommend checking out our videos on complete growing guides. We've done several videos on how to grow blueberries, and I guarantee you those videos will help answer some of those questions that you've got. But until next time, I hope you all enjoyed. I really hope you learned something new. And I also do hope that you're inspired to grow bigger. I know that this farm has been a bit of a change. I understand that. And I know that a lot of you have said, well, Luke, I don't know if this really relates to me or not, because I don't plan on ever having a farm. And that's a very real reality to me, that I am aware that not everyone is interested in growing as much as I am. I get that. But with any consolation, if you guys were ever wondering if that'd be something that you'd be interested in or aspiring towards, that's all this channel is really here for. It's education and inspiration. If all I do is inspire you to plant out a container of blueberries, mission accomplished. I don't think any less of you, and I certainly don't want to ever push someone away just because we're planting out a 60-foot row of blueberries, 3 of them. And I understand that that's out of the scope of many people's gardens. I understand that this is probably twice as big as about half of our audience's gardens. You know, I think the average garden space is probably 100 to 150 square feet. And the simple fact of the matter is this is 5 foot by 60. This is 300 square feet. So that's not lost on me. But I want you guys to understand that I do these videos to inspire and educate. And I hope that you get something out of them. I hope that you realize that I'm not shaming you because you don't have this, or I'm not bragging because I do have it, right? I'm only doing this because I want to show what's possible. I want to show what you can do. I want to show how you can change the world one garden at a time. And I also really want to show you I want to show you the beauty that can come from growing a bunch of different varieties. And ultimately, this space has been so good for us. It's been quiet. It's been, the fresh air is amazing. The space has been so nice. And so it allows us to do so many more amazing things. So again, I just want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for coming along with me on this journey. If you did enjoy, make sure to throw a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to share these videos with a friend if you think they'd enjoy. I really, really do appreciate it. And without you spreading the word, without you spreading the word, we would be nothing. So as always, thank you guys so much. I appreciate y'all. I'm just a guy with a camera and an amazing editor and camera person. So I'm nothing special. You guys are the real special person. So thank you all so much for being so special. And we'll catch you all on the next episode. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free, and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting MIgardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care.